Hey Tom, Alan Watson here. My wife Deanne and I are here for the second time. We had such a good time last year, we decided to come back.
Well, I'm happy you did come back, and we have a lot of people that were here last year, and I see them back again for a second time. We did lose some people, but I appreciate you asking me to come out and answer some questions for you, because I think you had some questions about how
I'm curious how the whole thing got started.
Well, you know, the whole thing got started. I think if you just say Fan Fest, I think we're talking 2009, but you have to actually go back before 2009, because Dennis Cody, I'm sure you remember Dennis, one of the unpaid helpers there that gives you your badge every year. He's just a right arm for me as far as us preparing every year. But you know, going back, you know, I don't have Dennis here to give me an exact year though, but Dennis would, you know, ever since I met him first met him in the 80s when they had the revival with the Go-Go's music and that kind of thing. They were doing some East Coast tour. I met Dennis at one of the clubs in Philly. I believe it was called, it was on Poplar Street. But anyway, Dennis and I knew one another through Mike Kuhn. I was introduced to Dennis through Mike Kuhn, who used to run the U.S. fan club. And of course he passed away. And but with Mike and Dennis, my friend Bernie, we had some of the local people that you've seen perform, Steve Chestnut. Dennis would invite us down once a year, and it always happened in June, July. And he didn't ask us to bring any food at all, except he did say, you know, show up with a dessert, we're going to jam. And he had his garage open, the house was open, and he would involve his relatives as well, and just have pretty much Ventures music all afternoon. So it was like a show up at 1, you stay until later, 9 o'clock. And then as we progressed and got towards the Ventures being nominated to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I decided, you know what, why don't we take it a step further? Why don't we look into renting a hall? Why don't we just do a one-time celebration of the Ventures music and being 50 years in the business? And so we planned to do that, and we had that in September of 2010. No, actually, that was the second one. The first one was in September of 29. And you know, to be perfectly honest with you, Alan, I thought that it was an unforgettable event because, you know, it was a 10-hour event. They let us rent the hall for 10 hours, and we had the caterer. But the musicians were limited in that we'd hear Pipeline by one band, and then they'd come up and do their version of Pipeline, or you'd hear Apache. And, you know, with the Ventures' vast number of songs that they've done in their career, to go through 8 or 10 hours of listening to, I mean, I think that the highlight was one version of Wipeout at the very end, but, you know, you're listening to the Pipeline and Diamond, so it got a bit samey. And I kind of thought that it was a forgettable thing. And I was only going to do it one time, and as we were all leaving, we were getting pats on the back that this was sensational. Let's do it again next year, or we're looking forward to next year when there wasn't going to be a next year. And so at that particular point in time, the Ventures were doing some U.S. touring, and they had gotten 3 gigs down in Epcot, at Disney World, Epcot Center, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 shows each day. And the band decided to do a Q&A on the Saturday of that event, that particular booking. And they brought the people in. It was right around the time that Del Halterman's book came out, which was the story of the Ventures. And so I had my copy there to get the Ventures to sign. And I remember walking into the room, and I remember they had the table set up. The first person at the table was Bob Spaulding, followed by Nokie Edwards, followed by Don Wilson, followed by Leon Taylor. And I didn't know any of the Ventures well enough to really, you know, have a lot to say to them. And I was meeting Bob for the first time. But having gone through 3 days of their shows, I was noticing some things on stage where songs would have certain things in them, certain little things in them that I thought Don was doing, and it turned out Bob was doing them. And so I kind of thought Bob was a bit of a sneak. And I remember he looked up at me when it was my turn, and he said, so what's your name? What do you want me to write in the book? Anything besides, you know, my name, or you want me to sign it or whatever? And I said, well, before we do that, I just wanted to let you know you're a little bit of a sneak. And I got a look from Bob, like I don't know this guy from a hill of beans, but what I was trying to say is Bob was actually throwing in some little things that embellished the song and made the song better, especially live. And so once he understood that, Bob Spaulding ended up signing my book. Thanks, Tom, for the bass remarks. All the best, Bob Spaulding. And then I got the corresponding signatures. And I got on the plane Sunday of that weekend of the Q&A, seeing my favorite music heroes for 3 days. And I got on the plane, I was thinking, you know what, if I did do the Fan Fest, maybe I need a draw, like somebody like Bob Spaulding, an accommodating venture of the four. I would think Bob was the most, he came across as the most accommodating. So I actually contacted Del Halterman, who wrote the story of the Ventures, and I asked Del if he would contact Bob on my behalf and run the idea by Bob. Would Bob come all the way from Austin, Texas, would he come east and spend a day, 12 hours with jammers that he could play, get up and perform with and share, Ventures music? And I guess maybe a month or two down the road, I got a direct email back from Bob Spaulding saying I'd be happy to be part of your event and I'd be happy to come and jam on a weekend, Saturday, and no issues whatsoever, so just keep me informed. So basically, after that, and I got Bob Spaulding here in 2010, we started submitting set lists early enough, or song suggestions early enough to our jammers that they started learning more challenging venture songs and more challenging material. And now we've gotten to the point where we're hearing new songs every year. We had one year where we had tributes. We had a tribute to the Beach Boys one year where the Ventures only did one song by the Beach Boys in their whole career. There had to be a reason. We thought maybe the Beach Boys music wasn't conducive to instrumental music, and that went over big, and it was 40 minutes of Beach Boys hits done instrumentally. So now we had a jazz theme one year, and we are now getting the Ventures jammers being they're actually cover musicians, because now we're getting them to cover songs they felt the Ventures should have done in their career but never did. So you never know what you're going to get out of a Ventures Fan Fest. And I do appreciate it that you asked me to come out and explain just how we got to this point. And we'll continue to do this every year as long as there's interest in the Ventures music, and we're going to try to continue the legacy going forward. Alan, do you have anything you want to ask at this point? I felt like I tried to do it as quick as I could.
Oh, you definitely answered the question. I just want to thank you for putting this on every year and having us out here.
Well, it is good to hear that kind of thing. It's good to hear that kind of thing. We dipped a little bit in attendance this year, but we'll get it back next year, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, take care now.
You too.